Yes, thank you. May I please invite Professor Subhrajit to take forward the session ahead. Welcome, Subhrajit. Can you please unmute yourself?
Thank you so much for introducing. Yes, here's the introduction. So, sir, would you like to? Should I introduce myself?
Subhrajit, yeah, if you can start with your, or let me introduce that. By the time you can please, check your mic. I need to hear you loud, little more loud, Subhrajit.
Okay.
Yeah, Subhrajit Datta, he's an associate professor and HOD from Communication Management at Adamas University. He is high-performing communication professional with more than 16 years of experience in internal and external communication, strategic marketing, and digital and social media. Datta completed a postgraduate program in communication management from Symbiosis Institute and master's in mass communication from Nanyang Technological University, Singapore. He was awarded the prestigious J.N. Tata and Sir Darobji Tata Scholarship in the year 2009 to pursue higher studies abroad. He has worked with leadership and cross-functional teams across continents and cultures. Datta has also been associated with top companies like Accenture, Johnson & Johnson's, Haldia Petrochemicals, DuPont, and Mahindra & Mahindra. He's a communications trainer and has conducted workshops for reputed banks and corporate brands. He has also taught communications and digital marketing in Nepal, Bangladesh, and India in a number of leading institutions and universities. It is an absolute pleasure and honor, Subhrajit, to have you in this panel to moderate this. Over to you.
Thank you so much. Am I clearly audible now, or should I?
Yes, you are.
Am I? Okay. Okay. So thank you so much, and it's been a wonderful afternoon in this part of the world. So I welcome everyone. I would like to keep it informal, rather. I won't say informal, but I would say like a semi-formal. So the objective is to get the maximum out of it for the participants. And of course, then you can ask me any questions, ask our panelists any questions, and then we will be glad to address this as kind of as a team. So I would like to, of course, I would love to introduce my esteemed panelists to all of you. But before that, I would like to introduce about the current context, because what we are going to discuss is about based on that was the current context that we are in right now. So as we know that the COVID-19 has changed the communication landscape forever. So it's been very, very different in terms of whether the corporate values, whether we are talking about advertising, whether we are talking about public relations or any other platforms, to be precise. Things have changed. Things have changed because a lot of fundamental change has happened, which has manifested in its what I should say, in its on the outside as well. So what happens is just to set a context on a humorous side, we used to shake hands. Now during COVID-19, we have done all of us leg shake and all of these. So if you have seen that from the communication perspective also, besides getting into the brand part of it, the communication perspective also, we have lost actually a lot of in terms of non-verbal communication, because we are covering our faces with the mask and everything. We really cannot see that what's the facial gesture that's going on the other side. So a lot of things have changed as per the basic communication process goes. And of course, in line with that, changed how advertising and PR industry has functioned traditionally in the industry. So we can say that some of the, as we know, that some primary changes that we have seen is a considerable drop in terms of advertising spending. So I'm quoting a report titled, This is how COVID-19 is affecting the advertising industry, which is published by World Economic Forum. So we can see that advertising spends are substantially down 9 to 10%. This was in 2020. So now we are coming out. But in that year, what we can see is a lot of change in terms of advertising distribution as well. So TV viewership has climbed because we were sitting at home. And then digital, of course, we know that it has now skyrocketed. We have seen the gaming industry, particularly the digital, the e-games, that has also has grown substantially, rather dramatically. Public relations industry, there is also a lot of change that has happened. People have lost jobs. There is a industry as such, which has been changed. It's no more there, where we were in pre-COVID situation. From now, the point that remains is even as a corporate values from razzmatazz, from different kind of from those what I should say, people are now more concerned from other than the glory part of it, the glowing part of it. We are now more concerned about is the brand responsive? Is the brand showing adequate care? Is the brand is something which can relate to our lives? And all of these. So a lot have changed. With this context, we will be starting with our topic today. And then for that, I would like to first introduce my first speaker, Mr. Sanjay Roy. That what is brand communication? The discussion is brand communication post-pandemic, what lies ahead. We are all very, very interested to know about that. And first, I would like to introduce, as I said, Mr. Sanjay Roy, and I will read a brief profile of Mr. Roy here. Mr. Sanjay K. Roy is a managing director of Teamwork Films, and which produced over 25 highly acclaimed performing arts, visual arts, and literary festivals across 40 cities in the countries, including the world's largest free literary gathering, all of us know, that's the annual Z Jaipur Festival. He's a founder trustee of Salam Balak Trust, working to provide support services for street and working children in the inner city of Delhi. In 2011, the White House presented Salam Balak Trust with the US President's Committee of Arts and Humanities Award for an international organization. Mr. Roy also received the National Award for Excellence and the Best Director Award for the film Shahzanabad, the Twilight Years. Mr. Roy works closely with the various industry bodies on important policy issues within the cultural space in India, and is a co-chair of the Art and Cultural Committee of the Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry, and former president of Event and Entertainment Management Association. So before I give it to Sir Roy, let me just quickly introduce my other panelists as well. I'm not going to read the details here, but I would just like to introduce all of us. Along with Mr. Sanjay Roy, we have Amit Mishra, who is the CEO MSL PR on digital PR and reputation. Mr. Xavier Prabhu, who is a founder and managing director for PRHUB. And we have Varun Duggirala, who is a co-founder and chief content officer at the Glitch. So first, I give it to Mr. Roy. So Mr. Roy, if you can kindly take over. And there are a few questions that we are going to talk about it.
Subhrajit, why don't you ask the question straight off? I thought we were doing a panel discussion rather than me doing a bhashan.
So the questions are, how have communication management altered during the pandemic? Is new media PR and reputation online the focus of communication going ahead? Has branding turned digital predominantly today? How are brand custodians looking at changing fortunes of traditional print and television media? How have the monetization on digital platforms still going slow? What is the future of experiential marketing and events in a digital-led world? How are events reinventing themselves? Is engagement online as dependable as engagement offline? How can engagement quality increase? What does 2021-22 hold for advertising, events, and PR practice? That's for you, sir.
Right, that's like a million questions. I'm assuming that we'll just go around the table and answer some of them. So
sure, sir.
It may not. Otherwise, it'll only be me speaking. Let me just take a couple of the initial questions that you've posed. How is communication management altered during the pandemic? And is new media PR and reputation online the focus of communication going ahead? And of course, has branding turned digital predominantly today? I think if we just look at the whole communication era that the pandemic has created, I think the most substantial change has been anonymity. That today, anybody on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, etc., as an anonymous voice, as somebody who may not know either the subject or the person or the content or the product, has a voice. And so no more is it about experts commenting, experts creating a brand or being able to manage a brand. You put information out there in public and you don't know what's going to stick, where the controversy is going to build, and how that's going to create a problem for a brand. The old adage of any news is good news, I think, has come to pass. And that's, I think, one of the biggest issues here, that a brand can be made or broken in a very small period of time by its online presence, primarily because many people think that their Twitter feed is the be-all and end-all of the new universe. The reality is that it isn't. There is a universe outside of a Twitter feed, and many brands who rush forward to defend themselves against A or B or C a criticism plays that particularly dangerous game of being too fast off the foot of the starting block and not quite knowing how this will pan out. I'll tell you, recently at the Jaipur Literature Festival, and Subhrajit, it's not Z anymore. It hasn't been Z for 2 years. Just need to update the bio. Okay. At the recent Jaipur Literature Festival, as usual, we had the usual calls for boycott due to A or B or C. And of course, we could have immediately reacted and put out our point of view. But our crisis team, which includes our colleagues as well, our colleagues in communication as well as Edelman, etc., our basic instinct has always been sit on your palms, let it play out, see what traction it receives, see what traction it receives from which aspect, from which kind of people. Are people with 3 to 9 to 20 to 100 followers, retweeting this, commenting about it? Or are people with verified Twitter accounts coming to the fore and providing a context? If there's a context, do we need to respond? Do we need to have a statement ready? And, today, because crisis is very much part and parcel of our world, our real world today. And it doesn't matter whether you're on the ground or you're on digital. A crisis dominates our world. And we go from crisis to crisis. And sometimes because we go from crisis to crisis, we tend not to be able to have the bird's eye view on the problem at hand. It's always best, whether it's an on-ground or online event, to immediately create a plan, a backup plan for any contingency that may happen. And of course, it's very difficult to think of every possible contingency. But where you feel there is a problem, like we felt there may have been an issue with Yusuf Malala as part of the Jaipur Literature Festival, or a comment on Al Gore and his session and his film at the Jaipur Literature Festival, or some of the others. And for all of this, we had a plan in place. And that basic defining moment of how PR works hasn't really changed online or offline, except for the fact that, hey, you're a whole new universe out there of anonymity. And anonymity today has allowed people to say things or do things which in the natural world where you meet face to face, you may not say it because it'll sound or be extremely offensive. That's disappeared. Today, offense is obviously one of the key factors in what drives any kind of public relations, communication. Has branding turned digital predominantly today? I think this has been something in the making for a while, and I don't think it's about today or yesterday. Yes, the need of the moment, because the pandemic came, everybody had to move from on ground to a digital. But therein lies a problem. I mean, today, if you look at the brands of most luxury retail, for example, you will see they have a huge issue, and the issue there is, how do you kickstart demand? It's not that you need to talk about a Louis Vuitton, or you need to relook at a Cartier and see how you want to brand build for them or define their brand. It's really, how do you kickstart demand and therefore come back to the brand, especially if you're a luxury item outside of the FMCG and the larger food area. One of the things that the pandemic did is, as we all know, it disrupted the eco chain, whereby you had raw material going in to create that product, and of course the product going to market. And that 6 month of disruption, where all of us have been sitting at home on the Zoom box, irrelevant, irrespective of what we're wearing underneath our shirts and our jackets for the moment, has meant that there has been no occasion to go out there and buy something new, except if you're having a really bad day and you want to do some retail therapy. And that has become the issue in terms of how do we look at branding in the digital space. The digital space primarily, and this is something that we've seen ever since the advent of television, which is now changing on the OTT space, etc. What is the sticky value? What is the sticky value? I mean, how many people, will stay around for this conversation as we go forward? So what is the sticky value to that brand, conversation, etc.? Is it pure advertising? Can pure advertising work? I think that's some of the discussions that we need to look at. How do you look at the sticky factor? And whether it's on radio, whether it's on Zoom, whether it's on OTT platforms and the MX players and the Amazons, etc., and of course television and what we now see as old media, which is print and television. Yes, things have changed, and the way that you're going to be able to put out a message, both PR-wise as well as brand-wise, has changed completely. So what you choose to do in print, you will do something slightly different for radio, different for television, different for the OTT platform. But the story that you tell has to be continuous. You can't be having different stories being told at different points of time on different medium. But you do need to address the issue of online fatigue, of OTT fatigue, of Zoom fatigue. You have to address the issue that today when we open our website, you immediately first cancel all the ads that pop up. You don't look at it. It's only perhaps on Twitter as you're scrolling down, or on Insta, where it's a much more visual medium, where food has come to the fore in terms of trying to become the trigger to any brand. Earlier, it was a sexy woman against a car, which sort of sold a product. Today, it's food primarily that's selling product. So it's a complex space, and it's an ever-evolving space, primarily because Technology will continue to evolve. And therein lies the challenge. How do you harness new technology, AI, virtual reality, to be able to target your customer, your consumer, and create an ad perhaps for the future, which is specific to that person or that group of people. And it's not anymore a generic ad, which has been shot for many millions of dollars, that say people like Dove and so on used to do, which used to then be the universal ad. There's no universal ad anymore, no universal branding anymore. It has to be
Thank you.
specific.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I'm going
Thank
to
you
end there
so
because there's
much.
no point me carrying on, and love to
No,
hear
actually,
Amit and
sir,
Xavier and
it's
Varun.
like wonderful that you have created the platform. It will work like a springboard, so that all of us, I know we have Mr. Amit Mishra, and then we have Mr. Xavier, we have Varun, and then Varun, I looked at some of your work as well, and then I know how passionate you are about the content, and then so everything that you have spoken out now, we can deconstruct, we are making it small parts, and we can discuss it in a focused manner. So I invite Mr. Amit Mishra, who's the CEO of MSL PR. So I just read it how it's a bio in a short one. Amit Mishra, CEO MSL South Asia, leads MSL in India and South Asia, overseeing over 400 colleagues. He brings over 2 decades of experience to MSL in the roles that span from reputation and brand consulting to thought leadership, public affairs, and crisis advisory for leading multinationals. So, sir, over to you. I'm not reading the entire thing. I know that through you, like under your leadership, MSL has really gone to the consulting, become the Consultancy of the Year awards, and you have been featured in different platforms across Asia. But
I think we are good. I think we are good.
Yes, sir. So
yeah,
if you
I think you have been more than kind, and I think in the interest of time, I think I would love to go straight in. Big hi to all my co-panelists, especially Sanjay sir. Catching up with you after a long time. I remember.
Good to see you.
I remember our first meeting years back when Imti was part of us, and I was at Hanmar and Partners, which morphed into MSL actually. So, and then when I was at Edelman, that's how the relationship transitioned. And firstly, thank you for the awesome work you're doing. Just creating conversations and being able to make it center stage, irrespective of whether it's suitable to not, is just a joy for people like me. So huge respect and full power to you, sir, for doing that. I think I just feel that it's really interesting what we have gone through, right? So I made a few points, but as I started thinking about it based on certain cues that Sanjay sir also outlined, I think the first and foremost is what's changed, right? I think, yes, technology was always changing, but the adoption has probably gone up. But human behavior has changed more for me than anything else. I think when I look at brand comms, I also look at it organizational comms, right? Organizational comms has changed dramatically. We look at our work in the context of paid, owned, and earned media, right? I saw earned media coming to the fore because what organizations were talking to, specifically with their employees, with their staff, with their entire vendor base, suddenly became center stage because suddenly there was panic, uncertainty, what will happen. So I think the first thing this has allowed or has forced all of us to do is to relook at our purpose. Why do we exist? So a lot of us have rebooted. We work in an ecosystem where we represent a whole bunch of corporates. For the first 3 months of the pandemic, there was just completely like what's going on. We were completely unprepared. And also the role of the government during the first 3 months specifically was so acutely heightened because all the rules and regulations were changing literally by the day. That was adding to the chaos. And I'm not saying anything for or against the government because everybody was managing it for the first time. It's hopefully just a once in 100-year phenomena. So what happened with us is when we saw brand comms, I think a lot of the focus shifted to a lot more purpose where people felt that organizational ethos, what you stand for is more important at this stage when everybody's reevaluating their values than pure sales-based communications, right? So we have seen that shift happening, and how that we have seen is from our client mix and the campaigns we have done, a lot of citizenship has come to the fore, right? We have all talked about CSR for a very long period, but I was really, well, it was forced on us, but I must say that by and large, our citizenship initiatives, which our clients have done, we have supported them, some we have done ourselves as well, have really been one fundamental shift. I hope it stays that way. I really hope, because also the second part is that the corporate world, it's so much cost cutting that right now they're sitting on the biggest pool of cash ever in the history. And I say that for the world as much as I say for us, right? Which I find a bit difficult to kind of, I know we all work in a world driven by numbers, but I also believe that the discussions that were started a few months back, or at least in the last wave around conscious capitalism, need to be also protected. And I may be overstating the brief here, but I believe that conscious communications, where we are very aligned with what is right for all the stakeholders, as we keep on pushing our brand messages, is going to be very central. So I do believe that technology, of course, I won't go into it. I think there are other panelists who can dive better into it. From our point of view, the biggest shift has been just this move to a conscious communications, if I may use that term, as a derivative of conscious capitalism. The second thing is, I think health has come center stage. And I'll give you one example. We had one unfortunate incident of a suicide in our group, where a 29-year-old person who was very healthy, was very outgoing, full of life, staying with his parents, just, took his life. We started, that caught us by surprise. That was pretty much April last year. We never thought it would impact the youngsters, but it did. We launched an anxiety helpline, and then we launched a whole bunch of counselors. And I'm talking at MSL is part of Publicis, so I'm talking about both MSL and Publicis, and we found the anxiety level through the roof. Then we made all the psychiatric, all the psychological, all kind of mental health support possible for our colleagues. And we were shocked and surprised that it was as used by a 21-year-old intern as it was by a person about to retire. Because, depending on your phase of life, you all were asking, oh my God, what have I done to deserve this? Why is it happening? And there were so many anxiety triggers. So we have put health at the center of everything else. So I really feel, and I see that across our client base, right? We now have somebody called Dr. Marcus Ramne, who's helping us at a group level, trying to integrate fitness as a way of building resilience, because we do see the pandemic and its tail, we expect a long tail to continue at least for another 6 to 9 months, right? We do also feel very confident that there will be a rollback, and we feel in the rollback actually, and that may be music to Mr. Roy's ears, is we feel that experiential will lead the way, because people are desperate for human touch. What you and me and we are discussing today can never be substituted by a physical vibe that we get across the table, that we get with the audiences. That's where magic happens, right? We are all social beings. So I think that there will be a massive rollback. I have no questions about that. We as a group also feel very strongly about it. It's just a question of when. I do feel that there will be enough vaccinations by June, July to start that uplift, and come Diwali, touch wood, things should look good. Already my friends in the event business are saying that while business may be down in dumps right now, post-October, there are a lot of interesting conversations, right? People are going to invest like hell. I mean, I'm giving you one example. There are a bunch of my classmates who all had their birthdays in the pandemic. Nobody celebrated, but they're all putting 5 lakhs together or some amount together to make sure that they have the biggest post-pandemic celebration, which is like an event, right? Almost 40, 45 people, whoever can make it. So I really feel very confident, but I think as we go through this, brand communications, which is conscious brand communications, is really the real shift that I see. I hope it stays, because it will be good for us, both as a society or a community of communicators, as well as a society at large. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you so much, sir. Do you think that the online interactions that we have is as credible as the offline, or do you think that there will be kind of
It's a compromise. It's a compromise. It's about getting the work done, right? But it's not a substitute. If when you actually communicate, one of the default byproducts of good communication is building trust. You get vibes, you pick up cues. I cannot get that sense. With all due respect to all the and fantastic technology which has kept us afloat during this period, right? So it's done its work, but it can't. The hug that I get, a high five I do, a little, even a handshake, an innocuous handshake can give me a lot of sense about the vibes I'm getting. I don't get that. So in a nutshell, this is just a makeshift for the time, but it's not a substitute for building or earning trust the way actual communication in the pre-pandemic world, the way it used to happen, right? So, and I think this will be a staying now. I believe there is new software coming in, and I'm sure technology people can probably bring in more where there are more sensory touches coming in. So on Microsoft Teams and Zoom, you will be getting more sensory, just a better feel of that vibe. Already it's happened. If you see the first iterations of what you were using in a year back or in April, and today, you have virtual backgrounds, you have breakout rooms, so I think software is, coming up to it, but, I may be a bit old fashioned, but there is going to be no substitute to that. And that's why I feel that there will be a huge outpouring of emotions when everything is settled and people would want to reconnect in a genuine way.
So before I move to Mr. Xavier, Prabhu, last question for you. Are you looking for some kind of a blended model, working model for MSL once people have vaccinated, once it's
stable? We are very open. We are very open, right? Whatever gives our colleagues the confidence and the comfort to do their job well. As of now, the first 3 months joy of working from home is completely gone.
True.
Right now, I'm sitting here. I've had to lock my one bedroom so that my mother can sleep well. And I know she had a frown on her face when she saw me opening up the comm. But work from home is, in terms of productivity, is at least 50% less. And I'm not even going into all the other screen issues and the online fatigue and all that. It is just not productive. And the last part of this whole missing link in this is energy, right? The human energy. We feed off each other because we get energized by each other.
True.
I mean, I can be sitting here and wearing Armani suit and putting on the best perfume and to what joy, right? When if it is not something that speaks to the people who will probably, even if it is for that odd small joy of getting a compliment, it's not the same. It's not the same. So I think we need human energy, and that is what we will be looking for as we reconnect. But we have kept all our options open. Just coming back to your point, I think we have got used to it. People are kind of meeting up already a bit in pieces. So we have a whole bunch of open air cafes. We've made a list of open air cafes in various cities where it is slightly better to meet as opposed to enclosed environments. We are following all protocols, but you're still not enough. One of our colleagues in Mumbai went down with his family last week who had hardly ever interacted with anybody because they had taken so many precautions, right? And yet they don't know where they got it from. So we will see how it goes, but we would love to get back to our old office space. That chemistry, the magic of people interaction is something that is woefully missing, both for me personally and I speak for my colleagues as well.
Thank you so much, sir. So that brings me to Mr. Xavier, Prabhu. So you have been hearing a lot of conversations on online, the human touch and how the brands are changing. So sir, now over to you. But before you start, let me just give a kind of a small introduction of yours. It's a long profile and illustrious checkered career rather, but I will just read a part of it. So Xavier Prabhu is a founder and MD, PRHUB and President APAC and global board member of IPREX. He has been an editor, journalist, entrepreneur, consultant, copywriter, and teacher in his 26 years long career. He is one of the leading names in Indian branding and communication space and is sought after by the leaders, both by private and non-profit sector, for counsel on brand building. So of course there is a lot, but we are more interested, sir, to hear from you on how post-pandemic this entire global brand scene will change, and anything, any personal inputs that you may have. Thank you, sir. It's over to you. Sir, you're on mute. Sir, you're on mute. If you kindly unmute yourself.
Yeah, sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks, Professor Datta and panelists. So one of the things that I clearly believe, and I think we just did a report in IPREX, where we involved partners from across the world, is that PR and communication will emerge much more stronger out of the pandemic than ever before because of multiple reasons. One is like Amit rightly pointed out, there is a huge need for empathy right now across brands, organizations, governments, and everyone. And the second is there is a lot of misinformation and disinformation that Sanjay was talking about. That it needs to be countered, managed, and all of that. And I think that's number two. Number three is the power of two-way communication has never been felt ever before, like the way we are feeling right now in all walks of life. So I think all of this is essentially the ante or the domain of true PR and communication. So like our report says, I think it's going to become much more stronger and in demand. Having said that, I think one thing that's very clear is the way that we've been doing this before is not probably the way it would get consumed or delivered in the future. I think that's one that I'm going to sort of a little bit speak about. The first is that the whole paradigm of owned, earned, and paid is going to become even more dominant now than ever before. And the larger PR and communication industry has actually focused itself on earned quite a bit. And when this shift is going to happen, and I think it's already accelerated to a large extent, one of the concerns that I'm already seeing on ground when you deliver these work to clients is that the number of people, when I'm saying people, professionals who understand this mix, how do you do this mix in the right manner, when to do earned, when to do owned, when to do paid, and how do you mix it, is very less. And that's actually a real challenge. And it's not easy to pick that skill up, because to do that you need to understand quite a lot of things. It's not just enough if you understood media and journalists and how they work or do their stories anymore. So it's completely a new set of skill sets that are in demand. And I definitely find the number of people who understand this mix to be fairly less. And I think it needs to increase, because in the new paradigm, that's going to become one of the most important demands or need or requisite or whatever you may want to call it. So that's the first point that I want to make, is that I think there is a lot of positivism. This industry will grow definitely, but I think we also got to do a lot of catching up in terms of skill sets that a lot of us have in that industry. And I'm not just saying this from an agency perspective. When I look at both the client and the agency perspective, I think it needs to happen at both sides, and not just on the delivery side, which is the agency side, but also on the client side as well. So that's the first point that I just wanted to share. The second one that I wanted to talk about is that digital gets talked about a lot as if like it's the be all and end all of every need and every objective that brands and organizations have. While digital is great, it delivers results, it gives you metrics like never before. I think digital is already seeing a great fight back, which is basically the law of dwindling returns, right? The more and more people invest in digital, the cost of acquisition per lead is only going to go up. It's happened in e-commerce. It's happened in many other categories. It's going to happen in multiple other categories as well, as more and more people start to use paid spends and whatever, ACM and all those things that, because it's a very simple common sense, right? You have a pot and you have only so much water in it. As people draw more water out of it, it is going to dry up at some point of time. So is digital. Digital is not an endless, Kamadhenu source of, water or anything. At some point of time, it is going to have a issue. And I think people don't understand that for digital itself to be effective, you need other parts to kick in, the credible content and a whole lot of other things that have to underlie that digital, so that digital continues to be effective. So I really don't think digital is going away or digital's growth is going to come down. I don't think that that's going to happen. Digital is going to be a predominant narrative, but I think trying to use digital single-handedly, or as look at it, as the savior for every need or demand that brand or an organization has, I think needs to change to become a lot more holistic. I think holistic is the real key word that I think you will hear a lot more. It's not about any single tactic or a tool or a medium. I think you're really going to speak a lot about holistic push or holistic communication or holistic engagement or whatever. I think that word, you're going to hear it more and more often, in the years ahead. The third is that, Amit sort of referred to it quickly. A lot of people have suddenly become, fascinated with this WFH, and then, whatever benefits of it. I believe, I think, Yuval very beautifully, shares that in his book. Human beings are very strong social animals. Social drives us at the core. I think nothing is going to change that. How much ever advanced we would become in the technology front. I think technology has always been an enabler. Technology has always been a tool. Technology has always been a means. Technology has never been the end. I think we got to realize, once you realize that's very significant but subtle difference, you realize that I think probably we may move to something like an hybrid, where you have physical which gets combined with the virtual. I think that's what people may move towards. But I think all this thing that it's going to be completely virtual, it's going to be work from home all time. I think those are all, I think, fairly too soon, and I think people are probably jumping onto it too fast to probably unknowingly. I think the longer term, there will be a balance that will emerge. Yeah, we don't know what that balance is going to be and when that balance is going to be achieved. None of us have view to that. But the fact is that at some point of time, we're going to go back to that balance. And I think we're going to have coffee. We're going to have, smile at people in person. And I tell you the importance of it. Yesterday night, I just finished media training, which I do for a lot of companies and people, with a newly appointed CEO of a global company. And I sort of knew, I did the same thing, but that magic was missing, because it's a screen to a screen. I can be my most charming self. I can have the best slides on the screen. I can be everything. But remember, the other person has no connect with me. Absolutely, right? Technology can only take you to a certain point. Technology cannot make you drink the water. That will only happen when I and he sort of sit across. And I sort of, realized at the end of it, even I, as the deliverer, didn't feel fully fulfilled and very charged at the end of it. It's a two-way challenge. It's not just the challenge of the receiver. It's also the problem of the transmitter, right? There is a problem. So what I believe is that the world will go to a balance. We don't know when that balance will happen, but I'm not an architect or a favorite fan of both extremes. I believe we will go to a balance. We're not going to say don't work from home. Not going to say all come into office. We're going to say, you know what, let's do a hybrid. What is that hybrid? What is that blend? Of course, each organization will do their own, figuring of that at some point of time. And I think that's the best way to go about. And the third point that I wanted to make is that this shift is also going to become very important for our industry, because it's going to become consulting to the fore. I think consulting in the real sense is going to become more and more important, because, it's all about even this blended, owned, and, earned mix and, paid mix is all about consulting. It's all about brains. It's all about intelligence. It's all about human intuition. It's all about, how do you mix it up? It's like a chef, right? You give me the same black pepper and, mix of vegetables. Am I going to make it like the chef? Obviously not. There is something that guy has inherently, which I am not going to be able to replicate. It will happen with communication. You will need those people who will bring in that extra value. I think that's what is, we are all going to move towards. I think that's very, very interesting. And in fact, that really excites me personally quite a bit, because I've seen this change myself in the last 10 months. A lot of things that I've done is not what I did before. I've seen that change. There is also more openness to these suggestions and ideas now, and I think that way I think COVID has been good, because COVID has opened up everybody. People are open to a lot of things which they were not open to before, and because it's very, very new, so people have suddenly embraced a lot of things. In that process, they've all become open. So when you go and sell them something today, they are more open than ever before. So I believe that's really, really good for PR and communication, because it allows us a vantage position from which we can actually engage clients in a refreshingly new way, driven by value, rather than I remember when I started my career in PR as a rookie, I used to run every day media rounds, going around and meeting journalists and all of that. And I think all the clients was asked is, what coverage did you get? I think it's changed dramatically, and I think it's a nice change to see that I think we are moving towards a more value-driven, much more deeper what I call engagement or approach than ever before. And I think the last one that I just wanted to share is that amazing amount of tools we have at our command today. Okay, we have so much of tools, platforms, mediums, and all techniques and all of that today. I think it's a fun time to be in. The amount of things that you have at your arsenal, if I were to use a military analogy, is that you have the best arsenal today, as a communicator. It is all about, what you decide to use, when, how, and I think that expertise has become the most important thing today. So, I feel absolutely, very excited about, what is the future ahead, because I think there is a change for better. And I think PR and communication has become more important than before. And I think it will have an uptake, but it comes with a challenge. The other side of the coin is, are we ready? Are we upgraded with the right skill sets to be able to leverage it? And all of that, I think that's the other side of the coin that's equally important. So
thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. And that, I think that picks up the ground absolutely right for Varun to jump in. So Varun Dugirala, I just quickly go through his profile. So again, Varun has an illustrious one, long one, but just to make it short, Varun Dugirala, co-founder and content chief, The Glitch, is one of the leading voices in modern advertising. He co-founded The Glitch in 2009 and has since helped it to grow to one of the most premier new age creative agencies in the country. And yes, I was actually seeing the website and you had an amazing one, Varun. Yes, in 2017, it was acquired by a global advertising giant, WPP. Through his popular podcast, Advertising is Dead, Dugirala talks about the changes, developments, and disruptions in the business of advertising, media, content, and entertainment. Over to you. So Varun, you heard about everything. You heard about the hybrid model. You heard about the work from home, not that great, but still we are living with it. You have heard about the engagement level. You have heard about when we sit and we have coffee together, that has a much more impact than having coffee at your end and my end. So now it's over to you, Varun. Give us some insights from the content perspective, from the engagement perspective, how digital media can play in it. Over to you.
So I actually have a contrary point of view. I love work from home. I never want to go back to office in my life. That is primarily how I have decided I will work for the foreseeable future. I also saying that because I think a large part of what we do, especially when it comes to digital, right? When talking about digital media and how we communicate today, you are dealing with the generation, especially when you're talking about the generation of right now, whose primary form of communication is online. They're doing it off all the platforms that are there. They're doing it off every form of social that is there. And I'm saying that not just from an agency lens, I'm saying this primarily from the fact that through my podcast, because my largest audience is students, is young people who are new professionals in this space. A lot of them have gotten a lot more access now to do things than they ever did before. And I'm looking at the plethora of talent, right? Like today, you could be someone sitting in any city, any town in the country, be working for any of the agencies in the metros without having to ever leave your house. Right, and we've been able to tap into that, and I think that more and more agencies are tapping into that resource. We finally have a resource pool beyond that coming in, fresher ideas, very interesting creative. Finally, taking creative out of the cities and taking it to where the where the real, let's say the India versus Bharat conversation we all keep talking about, in that sense of the word. So when you talk about how content's evolving, I think content's evolving primarily through how we consume it. And how we consume it is online, and we consume it in through how we do it across social. We also are creating it differently. One of the things that has really changed is how we create content right now. Till I would say March last year, and I look after the entire content and production capabilities, and also look into a lot of that for WPP across India. And what we have seen is a shift in mindset of how we look at creating it itself. So, everything from a remote shoot perspective to how we bringing tech into the mix in everything. I have used the term tech stack more than I have ever used it in my entire 11 years of Glitch, as I've used it in the last 6 months, right? So in every aspect of how we create, how we ideate, our ideas come from data. We create using technology. We're taking a lot of it away from human beings to bring in automation into the mix of things. You have, and that's also not being done just by brands and by agencies, right? You have a lot of companies coming in who are building an automation into interesting aspects. We were just testing something out, which an Indian startup called Pepper kind of built out, which is an AI platform that helps you come up with copy, right? And it actually works. I'll be very honest. We were a little circumspect before we tried it out. It totally works. It literally went across the internet, saw people were talking about on a specific topic, gave us enough options of what we could kind of put out, and then we refined it. So we're not taking away from the human experience. We're just enhancing it right now in how we communicate. Right? We're using that in the right way. And we're truly global now. I think as a world in how we create content and how we consume it, we're truly global, that you put anything in one place, you are consumed everywhere. You're able to target it, right? Because you are talking about first party data. You are bringing it up to that whole prospect of saying, who are you really targeting? Who are you creating it for? We're not making ads anymore. I know that ad time is, which is why my podcast is called Advertising is Dead, because I don't believe we make ads anymore. We make content. We make something which people want to consume because they find it something they would normally consume, not something that is interrupting their time. And keeping that in mind, every single piece that you create as a brand, as something which you're communicating out there into the world, is very important, that you have that lens in front saying, how would I consume this? Would I skip it? Would I hopefully get a subscription that I don't have the ads popping up between my content? Or would I actually consume this for content's sake? And that's the purest form to look at it. Well, all these other pieces I spoke about how we create, let's say, online or bring in automation, all those stuff are coming in. It is a large part of our lives. It's not coming tomorrow, it's already there. And we're just getting with the program in that sense of the word. But what is true is that you're dealing with a generation who create from day one, because everybody who has a phone right now, who is Gen Z or Gen Alpha, which is the generation coming right after that, are people who have had the tools to create content from the day they got a phone in their hands, right? So they are content creators. They are people who can use all of that. They don't need to have fancy cameras. They don't need to create sets. And so they're coming from that thought process. So if you are going to communicate to them, you have to communicate to them in the way in which they communicate. And with them, it's a two-way street. You're not sending them something and it's done. They're going to give you a response. They're going to give you feedback, and you've got to learn from that and move ahead. So in a broader sense, that's how I see this whole piece evolving. I think COVID's kind of accelerated that from something which should have happened, say 2027, 2028 to right now. What we're going to see going ahead, and I think some of the points in terms of just bringing consulting to the fore, etc., is so true. That's pretty much what every client's talking about how any piece that you create affects business. But at the end of the day, what we're kind of doing is appealing to people's value systems, right? What do I as a human being kind of value? What is my value chain? What are you creating that connects to it? And that will never go away. And that's pretty much there. Everything else is just, like I said, we're adding on a little more superhuman strength to what we already have as humans and our mindsets to create.
Thank you. So now my question, thank you so much. You have basically said anyone who has that creativity can create his own content. Everyone is a content generator right now because the barriers to entry has become very, very less. So one question from Shwetanjali Thakur is, Amit sir, is to you. are there any ideas to keep senior consumers who are not on social media engaged? And you responded to that, sir. So what will be your response to that?
Yeah, so I don't, well, again, you need to make some distinctions. I stay with my mom, she's 70 plus, and she's not on social media, but she's on WhatsApp. Now, so I am not able to get that sense who's not on social media. So one is she on Facebook or Twitter? She's not. But believe me, her WhatsApp consumption has gone up dramatically, and she's as informed today, some of it wrongly as well, because as you know, a lot of the stuff on WhatsApp is not always credible. But she's pretty much on top of her game, because her cohorts of friends who are on WhatsApp are giving her real-time information. But today it has become pervasive simply because today she's relying on what her friends are telling her on vaccine to be the driver of which vaccine and when, because she is also in that phase of considering. So I'm just giving you that cue just from what I can see from my own house. So she's not on social media, but she's very much there in terms of these chat apps. And these chat apps have become the real means of communicating. So I would say that the best way to communicate, and also because of the pandemic, we stopped reading the newspaper for a significant period of time, right? There was this huge fear that you may also get it through physical contact with the virus, which has since then been gone, and we've got it back. But she hasn't gone back to reading with the intensity that she used to. So I'm giving that as an example that, yes, if you want to reach senior citizens, they're all consuming news in some shape or form. I suspect it is a lot to do with chat apps, then social media. So you'll have to create content in a meaningful way that tends to be, that tends to get some traction with those consumer sets that you've talked about. But I think at the end of it, that senior citizen group today, their biggest fear and the focus is health. So any health-centric alignment of any messaging from a brands and organizational point of view will be something I think that will set up for more notice than not. So sure. Use chat apps and look at a health context.
Mr. Roy, one question for you. How are events reinventing themselves? With Jaipur Festival, so
Subhrajit, as everybody has already said, the COVID forced everybody, not everybody, but people who had the wherewithal to go online. We at Jaipur, for example, we pretty much, the lockdown happened 23rd March. We began the JLF Brave New World series on the 4th of April. And very quickly we realized that it had become very successful, which has both the pros and the cons. The pros were that by the end of the series earlier this year, we had over 4.8 million people who had viewed it. Many of them who hadn't ever actually been to the main festival before. It also completely changed on its head, the capacity issue. At the Jaipur Literature Festival, our biggest venue, which is the front lawn, used to accommodate about 14,000 people at a time. Here, the average was 32,000 people. Similarly, when we took Meta Theatre Awards, the Mahindra Excellence in Theatre Awards online, or we did, I Believe Art Matters, which was a 6.5-hour non-stop show with 450 artists raising resources for artists. We found that the traction that we received online was huge. And for us, we've been in an advantage where we've also been able to translate that into, income. By the end of this financial year, March 31st, we would have raised 7 or 8 crores in income of digital in 2 or 3 of these products. The downside to it, as Xavier said, and Amit alluded to, is that, on-ground events is really about creating a memory and an experience. And it's about sharing of energy. It's about being in the same room. It's about, lifting up, drinking a cup of coffee together, having a beer together. And the memory of the experience is something that you cannot transform or transfer onto this media in its present the constraints of technology that we have today. And that's going to be some way happening till we are able to do this exchange of energy and be able to have the conversations that you upend before or after meetings in the corridors of your offices with your clients before you walk into them, in events as people come in, at the end of the show over a meal. I mean, having a virtual coffee, we've all done Zoom birthday parties and 50th anniversaries and whatever on this, but none of this plays off, right? None of this really, it's like what Amit referred to, that all of his friends are coming together, contributing money to have a mother of all parties post-COVID. So events, I totally agree with what Xavier said, that events will really form a comeback come October 1st or September 1st, October 1st, depending on which part of the world you are in. But I'd also like to say that digital is here to stay. I mean, we, for example, will not go back to only a pure digital event because of the kind of access that we found. The Jaipur Literature Festival, the main festival that's just concluded on Friday. I mean, it was unbelievable, the numbers of people who came and stayed. It wasn't just the 49-second, paid viewer, which is now what we are in the process of doing as we're posting it on social media. But here it was people who registered, engaged, came, visited, went from venue to venue, because that's the experience that we were able to create. So, and unlike what we had on the ground, where, I mean, typically in the international audience on ground at the Jaipur Literature Festival, for example, USA is first, UK is second, Australia is third, and so on and so forth. But here online, I mean, for example, Germany is our fourth highest viewership, which hasn't even registered, say, on the ground as a percentage point. Even when Saudi Arabia in 2020 registered at 0.09% of the audience, Germany never registered, but now there are fourth or fifth largest audience. Similarly, Japan, typically in India as well. I mean, earlier, much of our audience used to be, of course, Jaipur, Delhi, Mumbai, and then the environments around it. Today, it's Bangalore and Chennai, equally so, or Calcutta and Ahmedabad and Goa and some of the smaller places, Bhubaneswar, Vishakhapatnam. These have all sort of popped up on our screen, and earlier they couldn't access the on-ground event. So I think, I mean, for us, it's certainly been an enormous learning, this 1 year break. We've been able to sit back, create new products. There's no going back to a purely on-ground. But what I think we will be doing is creating much more bespoke events as well, where you're able to leverage the interest of a small minority who have also resources to pay for it.
Thank you so much, sir. We have a question here, so we have to also close. But before we close, there's a question from Shobhi Ghosh, a media communication student at Adamas University. My question is about modern day audiovisual advertisement. We are seeing story-driven ads connect with audience somehow better than plain informative ads. So what youngsters like us should keep in mind while developing a story into an ad or ad into a story? So this question I would like to add, I'd like to give it to Varun. Varun.
Any form of content, I think I mentioned this when I was speaking earlier, if you're creating it for the medium that you're making it for. The old adage of making one piece and then just adapting it for all platforms is something that doesn't work for all platforms. So if you have an idea, think about how your outlay of the medium is going to be, right? How are you going to put it out, let's say, across reels? How are you going to put it out across, let's say, if you're coming in as a pre-roll, how is that going to really work? So understand the medium you're going to put it out on, then map your story around that way, because the classical setup, conflict and resolution doesn't work anymore on many platforms. You might have to start with the conflict and just come to the resolution at the end of it. You need to flip some of that stuff around. So understand the medium in which you're deploying more than anything else, and the idea then kind of finds its own form.
Sure. Thank you. So the last question for this discussion is 2021-22, the year that we are in. 30 seconds, everyone, please, if you would like to say, how do you visualize this world going forward in terms of branding and communication? So we can start with Mr. Roy.
I think there's a huge opportunity opening up at the end of the pandemic, and as the economy starts to struggle to recover, and that's still 2 years in the making, you will see brands willy-nilly having to force sort of what I said, gets be able to force the whole sense of recovery and build into the place this whole sense of need, etc. So you will see a huge comeback in terms of brand and brand advertising.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mishra, 30 seconds, please. What is your...
Pretty much echo
Yes.
the confidence that we will roll back. And I'm talking about business as a whole, but brands and communications will be steered a lot by what technology and innovations has to offer, because it's changing every day, right? Even today, when we look at the innovations that are coming through, they are so exciting for any communicator. As it is, we are seeing Clubhouse become a little phenomena, and I'm very sure that Facebooks and Twitters will also add audio chats onto their social platform. Just a question of time. So as new innovations keep coming, I think it will give us more canvas to play with, and that's exciting. So technology will be all pervasive on the other side. It has already started, but I think the speed will, both technology adoption and innovation will go up considerably.
Mr. Xavier Prabhu, 30 seconds, sir. So you're on mute.
Yeah. Sorry, Professor Datta. So I think I have a lot of optimism for the year ahead. I think the year ahead is going to be good from a communication and a PR perspective. Of course, I want to add the word cautious to it, because I think there are a lot of other things that are there which are headwinds, which I think none of us are in control of. Even the prime ministers and presidents are not in control of. So ordinary mortals like us shouldn't even try to wedge bet on it. But I think the real thing that I'm more interested about this year is, I think this is an opportunity for us to change some of the things that we wanted to for a very long time. I think COVID provides us that opportunity to go back and change, because people are open to change right now. That's a huge opportunity. I think the time to change business models, reinvent some of the things that we've fundamentally done is now. I think the next 1 year, for example, personally, I've put it as a year in which I want to take many of my risks that I've never taken myself in the past decade or so. So I said, let me go and take the risk, because everything is a risk today. Stepping out of the house is a risk. Going to a restaurant is a risk. So go take a risk, because everything is a risk today. So go, explore. You don't know, COVID has taught us new things. Probably the next post-pandemic will teach us new things as well. So approach it with optimism. So that's the thing that I'm actually really feeling right now, is to go out, learn, explore, and figure. It's nice in a way. Of course, it's not good. I don't want to put down the ill effects of the pandemic, and I think it made a lot of people suffer. I think that's the bad side of it. But I think from a professional perspective, yeah, I think it's a lot to look forward to.
Thank you, sir. Varun, last question for you, as well as your comments on what lies ahead. So the question is there any freelancer work or program for radio for who can't reach from the village area, who has extraordinary skill? So someone very skilled, but someone in the village, so there is a kind of a technology gap. So is there any suggestions for you, any optimism for you for them? Yes, Varun.
Not really connected to the radio space, so I wouldn't really know, to be very honest. But if there are some technical skills you can kind of do from wherever you are, the fact the internet allows you to connect and find a way to get work now more than ever. You don't have geography kind of playing against you right now. But I wouldn't really be able to comment on the radio space per se. Speaking about the year ahead, I'm supremely optimistic, because I think a lot of the changes that have gotten accelerated in the last year have taken us to a point where we are kind of in the future, right? We've been talking about for way too long, saying when is the future going to arrive? I think we're pretty much in it right now. And I think a lot of the work we're doing is exciting, because we're moving towards a system where we're not dealing with what was regular advertising or communication anymore. We're dealing with effective communication from really completing the curve for brands, from not just data and ideation and creation to really being able to push for sale and bring it back together. And that's something that's really exciting. Also to be able to do that at scale not just at like a city or a country level, but really at a global level is really where the thing is. But I'm most optimistic, and I say this to everybody all the time, is that I'm most optimistic about the fact that I can still work in shorts for the rest of the year, and that for me is something which I'm deeply satisfied by and continue to be.
Thank you so much. Wonderful discussion. And then we had a lot of anecdotes, personal stories, how we move further, a lot of optimism. So with that, I conclude. I can see that a lot of things, someone is saying work from home. No, I wish to go back to office. Someone is saying absolutely happy in shorts. So very, very different perspectives. So I give it back to Chandan. Chandan, would you like to have any comments, anything before we close?
Oh, yes, thank you so much. So thank you, Professor Subhrajit, for making this session more exciting and the way we proceed. And since everyone is not that friendly and used to the technology, we have also evolved a lot, learned a lot. Every day is a learning day for us. Thanks to the people who are very frequent to these webinars and who have been speakers in many of the forums, we are still learning from each other. There are many glitches and coming over here. I'm very happy to see lots of good content came from this session. It has been very engaging, very interesting, and it was a delight to hear from the eminent speakers like Mr. Sanjay Royji. I'm so excited to hear you. Mr. Varun, thank you so much for for joining us over here. Mr. Xavier Prabhu, founder, managing director, coming. Thank you so much for here. Mr. Amit Mishra ji, CEO. Of MSL South Asia. So thanks for joining in this session. And we had a very lovely moderation by Subhrajit Datta. And we look forward for more interesting deliberation like this. So the only outcome which I came to know from this session was let's embrace the technology, be innovative, keep skilling, reskilling and upskilling is what an overall crux of the whatever panel discussions which we are coming. Thank you so much, audience, for your patience and for being a very enthusiastic listener and learner. Hope this session is getting interesting and informative and more engaging. Let us make this events more dialogue based by just putting a few of your questions and queries in the chat box at Q&A, so that we can ask these questions and queries from the eminent speakers to make this more engaging. So thank you so much for joining in this session.